So, A'ja Wilson was interviewed and probably said something that she shouldn't have said.
A'ja Wilson is reacting poorly to the news that the Indiana Fever will have one free agency. She may be experiencing a midlife crisis, as well as feelings of betrayal and confusion. A'ja was shocked when Sue Bird dropped the bomb. Was it shock or the realization that the league isn't a personal buffet? Hold on tight, for this drama is only beginning.
That takes us to Indiana, which I think everyone agrees right now has gone from, a team that made the playoffs last year, lost in the first round. They were building all these young pieces, of course, Caitlin Clark, to now an immediate contender with all the moves that they've made. I think Natasha Howard certainly stands out. I loved playing with Tosh.
As you can see, when Sue Bird speaks, people pay attention. She has receipts, and she has the gall to declare the Indiana Fever the free agency victors. In addition, she added a little more zing by referring to them as legitimate championship contenders as soon as she said those words. A'ja was not having it, and you would think that someone had informed her that basketball would no longer be played at all. Vegas Aces supporters were already wheezing into paper bags.
So, Sue Bird is one of the greatest point guards of all time in the WNBA. And she's someone who obviously is a part owner in the Seattle Storm. So hyping up another team is a bit of a conflict of interest, if we're being honest.
Let's face it, things were already difficult for Vegas. They went from being a dominant team to appearing as though someone had flipped the Monopoly board in the middle of the game. Players had left, the chemistry was suspect, and now the Fever had arrived like a team that had just discovered cheating COD. But the real dagger was Indiana.
Colson from the Aces. She is 100% vibes. She is 100% going to be a backup for Caitlin. It's going to be fantastic. Backup for Kelsey. She is a great addition to this backcourt. She has senior leadership. She has championship experience. She is the most fun ever. And Stephanie White and the Indiana Fever front office is not messing around. They are putting everything in place to make sure that this year is a championship caliber team, and every addition it gets better and better.
You don't simply lose a guy like that and move on without any concern if you know Sydney Colson, who is the Aces' heart, soul, and comic relief. Sydney's departure is like your best friend switching groups and then suddenly succeeding without you. It's painful, and for A'ja Wilson, it just adds to the mounting list of events that have caused her to reevaluate her life choices. First, the Aces front office makes some decisions, and then her teammates are running away like burning buildings.
You got the MAGA Barbie. Look, this is gonna be good and bad for the Fever. And this is gonna be good and bad for CC. Because if CC can't get a ring with the Super Avengers that Kathy and the Indiana Fever has assembled, then...
Additionally, they're eating because they didn't just develop the Fever. Sydney Colson, no. They stole the league's best players, their face, their blueprint, and their culture. Fans of the Vibes and Aces are now acting as though they were just texted off, and tantrums are erupting everywhere. These days, TikTok and Twitter are a disaster, with Vegas supporters yelling into the air as if their team hadn't won consecutive titles.
What do you mean Sydney Colson is joining the Indiana Fever? What does that mean? Indiana is just being so fucking greedy right now. They took DB, they took Natasha. Now they got Sydney Colson. Why would they take Sydney from us?
In the meantime, Indiana Fever supporters are prospering. They've gone from yearning for any sign of life to suddenly seeing their team stacked like an Avengers roster. It's telling me, how dare you continue on without our energy? Caitlin Clark will arrive soon. With Sue Bird's public endorsement, the supporting cast is looking quite threatening, and fans of the Fever are suddenly acting as though they've won the lotto.
Now the expectations have changed. I'm sure the way they're approaching this season have changed. I think the biggest part of DB joining this team is that she's already played for Steph. So I think that's going to help bridge the gap, because as we go along, we're going to talk about Vegas and Seattle, Atlanta. It's really going to be which
Stephanie
team.
White being the head coach of,
Right. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. Thank you.
Was the head coach of Connecticut, now the head coach of Indiana.
A'ja Wilson, on the other hand, is left trying to put her team back together while watching Indiana become the team to beat, and, let's face it, she's not happy about how this is shaking out. The real question now is whether the Aces can recover from this chaos, or if the balance of power has officially shifted, because if the Indiana Fever truly did win, Asia and Aces fans might have to get used to a new WNBA era, because if you say anything less than, let's just make the playoffs to hang the banners, now rational thinking out the window. If you say anything less than Indiana Fever are inevitable, prepare for war. No one was prepared for Indiana to go from being lovable underdogs to becoming legitimate threats overnight. And worst of all, nobody could argue with them.
And a Fever team,
They getting paid anyway?
that are like, no, but players who will be free agents next year. There's a lot of other shit going on that players are like, this ain't where I want to be.
The only thing rival fans can do is sit there staring at their screens, hoping that Spurd got it wrong. However, Sue isn't just hyping up Indiana for fun. She understands the game and can see what's coming, which terrifies rival fans, because if Indiana is truly going to become a problem, that means someone else is going to be knocked down a peg. The denial is strong, and you have fans frantically looking for coping mechanisms because they're still young and haven't proven anything yet. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, but championship contenders are secretly anxious because every move they make is now scrutinized and every game is seen as though it were the playoffs. Rival supporters aren't merely praying Indiana loses. They need them to.
They have Caitlin Clark. They have Aaliyah Boston. They made sure that they re-signed Kelsey Mitchell. That was a big one. They acquired both Natasha Howard and DeWanna Bonner. They traded for Sophie Cunningham. They still have Lexi Hull. And now they have made a move that is literally my favorite of WNBA free agency. They have signed Sydney Colson, face of the WNBA. If you know, you know. You might look at Sydney Colson's stats and be like, oh, she doesn't really give that much of anything. She doesn't score. She's averaging like 2 points a game. That's fine. The Fever do not need another high-volume scorer. They need a veteran backup point guard who can help manage that offense.
Fever supporters, meanwhile, are having the time of their life while seeing the mayhem. They went from being the team that no one cared about to becoming the central figure in the WNBA plot, and they're really enjoying it because the Indiana Fever are the talk of the town for the first time in a long time. They went from being the team that no one paid attention to becoming the focal point of the WNBA narrative, and they're actually enjoying it as much as they ought to, because for the first time in a long time, the Indiana Fever are the topic of conversation rather than just a part of it.
Love DeWanna Bonner. Love Kelsey Mitchell, but Sydney Colson, the face of the league, to the Indiana Fever. Indy better roll out the red carpet. I swear that I have to get a Colson jersey now.
And speaking of talks, A'ja Wilson just started a crazy one because after all this free agency craziness, she really turned around and blamed her own teammates for losing last season. Yes, those are the same teammates she was hyping up, calling them family, and talking about how fortunate she was to have them. Let's face it, nobody anticipated that A'ja would handle the Indiana Fever situation well, but putting her own squad under the bus is extremely frustrating. The team she was all smiles with after back-to-back rings is suddenly the reason they didn't three-peat, so it makes sense that AC's fans are scrambling to make this into something else.
Yeah, this is damning. It really is. I gotta tell you. You see this quote. Quote, it wasn't a championship locker room. Wow. Wow. Okay. Interesting. Holy smokes. Las Vegas Aces.
She didn't mean it that way. She was just being honest. It's tough love, okay? But let's not act like half the team didn't hear that and start side-eyeing her right away, because if you're in that locker room, you're undoubtedly feeling something. Imagine working hard throughout the season, battling injuries, and giving your body for the team, only to hear your star play or turn around months later and essentially say, yeah, they weren't good enough. That group chat is currently on fire, and Sydney Colson is probably laughing and drinking tea knowing that she left in time.
Everything was not given, you had to take it. You know, those life lessons have kind of transformed me into who I am now, and, you know, I know that this is not going to be an easy road. I know that this is, I probably took the path of most resistance. But that's what's exciting to me, because that's what I've always done, and I've always flourished in that.
As well as the timing, the Aces must now proceed with whatever chemistry they still have after hilarious free agency, just ended roster moves. You know, rival fans are loving every moment of this. They've been waiting for any sign of weakness in Vegas's armor, and Asia just gave them a whole wrecking ball. Meanwhile, Fever fans are enjoying popcorn while watching the reigning champions collapse while their own team is out here, thriving Indiana. The Las Vegas Aces have transformed from a dynasty in the making to a soap opera with weekly plot twists, while Fever, yes, the same Fever who spent the previous few seasons as the league's punching bag, now appear to be contenders. The team's comedic glue, A'ja Wilson, no longer even has her closest buddy Sydney Coussin, and the vibes are in complete disarray. As if things couldn't get any worse, Kelsey Plum chooses to set the entire home on fire.
Okay, and she is very much excited. Scratch that, she is ecstatic to be at LA Sparks, and she's talking about how this is the best treatment she's received as a WNBA player. This is an article.
Oh, yes, Kelsey Plum, the Aces' golden child, the fan favorite and the sharpshooter, just went on record stating that she has never received as good treatment in the WNBA as she has since leaving Vegas for the Sparks. If you're A'ja Wilson, this must feel like an ambush at this point. She loses players one after the other, then she unintentionally makes fun of her own teammates, and now one of her best scorers is out here revealing how messy things were behind the scenes. Let's be honest, though, Kelsey didn't say that out of the blue. Players don't just start revealing their former teams unless there's a lot going on, and judging by the way Vegas is unraveling, there's hot scalding tea.
I've been treated better than I've ever been as a WNBA player, which is, that's not an ideal one. It's not an ideal thing to hear from a player from their previous franchise, especially if you're the Aces, who are seen as like the gold standard for WNBA franchises.
In the meantime, the athletes that left Vegas are doing quite well. Chilling out is Sydney Colson. As if they had just been liberated from basketball prison, Kelsey Plum is thriving in Los Angeles, and all of the players appear to be happy as a result. The reality is coming to light, and Vegas supporters are finding it increasingly difficult to maintain the illusion that everything is okay. This isn't a minor upheaval. Rather, it's a complete collapse, and those championship hopes are now seeming extremely precarious. The Aces may still have if things continue as they are. A'ja Wilson may end up leading a one-woman army and facing a rising Fever squad that won't be able to compete. The Aces may still have trouble acquiring star players, but they already appear to be outmatched and up against a Fever squad that is already championship material.
Kelsey Plum took her baggage, baggage sounds very negative in connotation. The Aces are the ones that have the baggage. Kelsey Plum took her luggage and went over to LA, and yesterday...
Additionally, if Vegas hopes to win this year, someone needs to start stretching because everything is going to be on one player to keep things from blowing up in their face. If they want to survive, she will need to put this team on her back for real this time, but let's talk about something even more stressful. MVP. Yes, she might want to keep an eye on the backside because Caitlin Clark is coming, and not just coming with a vengeance. The WNBA hasn't even seen Clark take the court yet, but she's already making waves. She has the hype, the skill, and the moment she lights up defenses, the MVP conversation is open. The worst part is that she's not alone. The Indiana Fever are loading up like they're creating a championship-winning super team overnight, with Clark, the veterans, and momentum, and as we've already seen, this isn't just excitement, it's real.
So the number one reason that we feel she will win the MVP is her level of competitiveness and her desire to be the best. I feel she's ultra competitive. I think she has the Michael Jordan mentality. And she's driven to get better. I think she's the hardest working basketball player on the planet.
Vegas may still have some fight left in them, but Fever is hungry. And if things continue this way, they could just eat if you enjoyed it. The MVP race is going to be savage. So while one team is out there fighting to avert a full-scale implosion, another is coming straight for the throne. Additionally, subscribe to see more videos today.